Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Buffalo SportsCenter video. I am Don, and today we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills and whether or not their defense has actually gotten stronger this offseason as compared to the last. I'm not going to be the only one talking about this today, unlike normal. Today we actually are bringing on the co-founder of our Instagram, Cal. How are you doing today, Cal?
Doing great. It's good to be back, and yeah, let's get talking about the Bills. I'm pumped for this season.
Absolutely. The Bills, they've made plenty of changes, especially in the trenches this offseason. Brandon Beane has made it his top priority to get that situated because it was clear, especially in that divisional round game, that the Bills were absolutely destroyed on the offensive line and the defensive line. Of course, today we're only going to be talking about the defensive line. And, before I get into all of that, Cal, your brief, general thoughts on how Brandon Beane has done reconstructing this defense.
Honestly, A plus. When we first started the offseason, let's remember Tremaine Edmonds left, right? He went to Chicago, got the absolute bag. Personally, I'm not a huge Tremaine Edmonds fan. I wish him the best in Chicago, but I just don't think he was the answer for this defense. And let's just say getting rid of Leslie Frazier, I think that's going to help a lot too. Early on, I thought, we got some conflicting views going on. It could be better, could be worse. Then Brandon Beane made a ton, and I mean a ton of great signings. I think he did a fabulous job.
Yeah, and I think you did one too. And you did mention your little brief monologue there about how the Bills let go of Leslie Frazier. Now, there has been a little bit of controversy this past week as to what really happened. Did Leslie Frazier leave as the Bills said he did, saying that, oh, he just wanted a year off? Or was there a backdoor disagreement between him and Sean McDermott as to who would be calling the plays? What do you think, Cal? Let's speculate.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, right? You can't believe what anyone says. I mean, I don't think we'll ever know the full truth to it. Let's be honest, though. I mean, Brandon Beane had to see that Leslie Frazier's defensive scheme was not working, right? He got outcoached by the Chiefs multiple times, and that Bengals game was the real kick in. I mean, that game was brutal. Zero changes throughout the entire game. I know it was bad weather, but Cincinnati just took advantage of our scheme, and they didn't have to change anything the entire game because Leslie Frazier decided to keep his bend but don't break, soft cushion defense the entire game. I could go on and on about it, but simple as that, I think we needed a change. I believe they quietly let him go and said, we're going to kind of say you stepped out, stepped aside. You could see it going the other way, though. Maybe Leslie Frazier said, I don't have enough say in the defense. McDermott's kind of pressuring me to do this one way thing. Maybe McDermott's purposely making Frazier look bad so he gets control. Either way, we got Sean McDermott as our head coach and DC this year.
Pretty much, yeah. Leslie Frazier, and there was that whole thing on the Pat McAfee show a couple of days ago. I think his name was Mike Lombardi. Came on and was saying, "Hey, Sean McDermott. I'm not sure why they got rid of Leslie Frazier. He was the one that called the final 13 seconds against the Chiefs." I just don't really understand where that whole thing is coming from. There's literally a camera shot of Leslie Frazier putting the call sheet up to his mouth, covering it, and it's clear as day that he's calling the plays. He's having at least some input on what play will be drawn up next. So I just don't get all the anti-Sean McDermott slander. I do get the Leslie Frazier slander because that guy was frustrating as all hell, even when they brought him back in 2017.
Absolutely. And Lombardi, he's got a history of being, kind of questionable. He's made some very true statements over the years, and he's also made some absolutely wild statements that are not true. So I'd take his word with a 50-50 shot again. Can't believe what anyone says. But yeah, I like Sean McDermott as a DC. I think he's going to do a great job this year. That being said, as a head coach, I'm not so sure, right? We all have our questions about him. He hasn't got us to the promised land yet, and his time management is kind of poor. But I like his aggressive style on defense. And I think Brandon Beane got him some absolute dogs to play on that defense and to fit right into his scheme.
And speaking of that, let's go right into our defensive line here and talk about some of the additions that they brought in. And I was out and about, so I didn't get to make a whole video about this, but the big headline for the Bills' defensive line acquisitions was they brought in big-time defensive lineman Leonard Floyd in on a 1-year, $9 million deal in free agency. Cal, I love this Floyd deal. What about you?
I honestly might say move of the offseason. It's very sneaky, right? Move of the offseason for the Bills. Let's not in the whole NFL, but this is a very sneaky good move for the Bills. I had him as the top edge rusher on the market in free agency. I know a lot of people like Frank Clark and other guys, but Leonard Floyd, he's a very solid player. The biggest thing with him is he can give Von Miller time off to the sideline, right? You needed a guy that could go in for Von Miller, pretty much fill his role so that Von Miller didn't get hurt, didn't get overused, and that you could have Von Miller for the clutch moments at the end of the season. Unfortunately, last year Von Miller didn't even make it, near the end of the season due to that ACL injury. Hopefully, you can prevent that by plugging Leonard Floyd in there. I think Leonard Floyd's a great player. The last 3 seasons, 10 sacks, 9.5, 9 sacks. I think he could get you 9 to 10 sacks this year. I really like him as a player, and I think he's going to fit right into McDermott's game plan.
I think so too. I totally agree with you that this was the sneakiest move by any NFL team of the offseason. This was phenomenal. Leonard Floyd, he was supposed to be getting a career money, his final big contract. I think he's already 30 years old, I believe.
Yeah,
29,
he's
30.
getting older.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's getting up there. He's a couple years behind Von Miller, and everyone is. But you're right. This gives the Bills time and flexibility to do whatever the hell they want on the defensive line. And when Von Miller gets back, probably by week 6, I think he's saying that, oh, I'll be ready opening night. That usually doesn't happen. And if he does, expect him not to see major snap counts. This just gives the Bills a stacked, elite defensive line because now you have Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, another acquisition, Puna Ford. You have
Mm-hmm.
Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, and you got Leonard Floyd. That is some serious depth. And if everything clicks, then we can finally see Epinesa take that next step. He took a big step last year, quietly posting, I think, 7 sacks on the season. Greg Rousseau looked like an absolute game wrecker at times. I think he'll take another big step. Look at him to maybe get to that 9-10 sack mark. I just think the Bills' defensive line is scary coming into this
Yeah,
upcoming season.
it really is. And I mean, they could do some crazy stuff, right? Because Leonard Floyd, he could play a little bit of linebacker too. Same thing with Von Miller. We've seen Greg Rousseau in the past few years play a little bit of coverage. So you never know what that D line could be. They could bring out, 5 guys and drop one back. They could send to all of them. We don't know what McDermott's planning with them, but that is a stacked lineup. And honestly, I think you might have to, trade one or both of Oliver and or not Oliver, of Epinesa and Boogie Basham, because those 2 guys, they're not going to have a huge role just looking how stacked this line is and how many guys they brought in. So if you could get some acquisitions for at least one of those guys, hopefully you pick the right one and the other one turns it on this year.
My guess, if we were to pick between Epinesa or Boogie Basham, I think Boogie Basham would be out the door. Epinesa, to me, showed enough. He had some really strong underlying numbers as well. His pressure rate was way up. His sack rate was way up. His win rate at the line of scrimmage was way up. I think he's finally progressing as a player, as a defensive lineman. Finally, thank Lord. But I think Boogie Basham he hasn't shown enough. Never really has been all that consistent at the NFL level.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up Ed Oliver. We got to talk about Ed Oliver, right?
Yeah.
4-year extension. Who saw that coming? Completely out of nowhere. Shocked me. Obviously, the first 2 years are pretty cheap. So maybe it was a cap move where they're like, can't really get a lot for him if we trade him right now. So we might as well sign him long term. Get some good contract money from him. Those last 2 years, though, you got to pay him. And I know Bean's done some good finagling in the past, but maybe they're hoping for one good year from Oliver, then you trade him, make another team pay those last 2 years. Maybe he's just committed all 4 years. I personally, I did not see that coming, and I know a lot of Bills Mafia was shocked by that move as well.
Yeah, and I was too, and I eventually looked at my phone and I was like, huh, that's not the big contract that I thought the Bills would be signing this offseason. I thought DeAndre Hopkins was going to be getting that kind of money. No, it was Ed Oliver. I feel like this will be the right move because the Bills definitely need Ed Oliver. They need that run stopper, especially with some other guys departing, especially in the depth realm. So I overall on the defensive line, I think the Bills did pretty good. Let's keep on moving though on to the linebacking core, and this is probably the most divisive group. Still at this point in the offseason because it's been a little topsy turvy. Cal, what do you think about the linebacking core?
Yeah, it's gonna be something, right? There's a lot of question marks here. Who is gonna play middle linebacker? You still don't have a definitive answer. You got Dotson, who is an option. You go out and draft a linebacker from Tulane. That could potentially, I mean, just looking at mini camp, looking before that, they're saying, these guys are adapting pretty well. But there's a lot of confusion too. Guys have gone on different podcasts and said, there's a bunch of guys trying to call different plays, and no one can really fill in for Tremaine just yet. A lot of time to go, though. They got a lot of time to take that, get that taken care of in training camp. Milano, he's going to have to step up, but we know he's gonna, right? He's done that every single year with the Bills. He has just been a phenomenal player. I'd go out there and say he's the best player on the field most of the time on that defensive side of the ball. So I have full confidence in him. You bring in Rapp from the Rams. I know he could play safety a little bit too, but I think you could honestly slide him down to linebacker, play a little fast coverage down there. Um, the linebacker, the group, a lot of question marks, but I think we'll be fine. Especially with that revamped D line, you're not going to need as much coverage time this year.
Yeah, and we just mentioned a couple minutes ago how Leonard Floyd and even Taylor Rapp could slide in and become a hybrid linebacker. That should provide some definite support. In the Tulane linebacker, Dorian Williams, he has looked kind of impressive, I will say, during minicamp. In the little bursts that we've seen him, the little videos, the clips we've seen of him, he's looking good. Dorian Williams, I think he could be another out of nowhere kind of defensive star for the Bills. We know that Sean McDermott has a real knack for seeing middle linebacking talent. Maybe Dorian Williams is that guy.
Yeah, Dorian Williams, you said he's looking pretty good. He also looks like Tremaine Edmonds from a physical perspective. A lot of people have pointed that out. So maybe it was just meant to be, right? I mean, he definitely not as big as Tremaine Edmonds, but maybe, just he could fill that role and be a star linebacker that we thought Tremaine Edmonds was going to be, but ultimately did not pan out for us.
Yeah, unfortunately, that didn't work out. He got the big money, moved to Chicago. I still don't think Chicago will be a good defense, but at least Tremaine is getting paid. Let's move on now, finally, to the secondary, where there's not been quite as many moves. In fact, there's been a lot of promising return to forms I think, for a lot of guys in this area.
For sure. I mean, of course, you got Benford, you got Elam. You don't know what's going to happen, right? Benford, he could transition to safety later in his career. There was a lot of talk about that last year. But let's look at the safeties, right? We got both of our guys back. Who thought Poyer was returning? Not me. Well,
No.
he's back. I know that happened a while ago, but Hyde fully healthy, Poyer fully healthy, hopefully coming off, I'm sure, an absolute hodgepodge of surgeries in the offseason. Tre'Davious White fully healthy to start the year, which last year I mean, we were waiting week after week after week. Is he going to play? Is he going to play? No, 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 right? I don't think he was ever fully healthy last season. So to get him fully healthy, that's going to be huge. Secondary should be a little more mature this year. And then, of course, you got, your backups who we truly don't know, right? There's a lot of speculation with Damar Hamlin. Does he make the team, right? He's going to be a big story going into training camp because talent-wise, I don't know. He's kind of on the fence, but it just doesn't seem right to cut him, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. There will be added. There will be added competition because of Taylor Rapp, and the Bills did draft Alex Austin to play on the outside in case there's another injury crisis. Dane Jackson also returning to the fold, which I don't know about you guys.
Sometimes he's good.
Yeah, I just remember that Thanksgiving game. Ooh, not too good. Taylor Rapp, I said. Jared Maiden, he's going to be solid, I think. Cameron Dantzler as well. Really solid players. And this is one of the things that I don't really get. A lot of people are saying that the Bills defense is going to be bad and that this Bills team is not going to be as good as what they have been in the last couple seasons. You mentioned it. Trey healthy. Poyer, healthy. Hyde, finally healthy. Benford, hopefully healthy. A lot of these guys are coming back to full health. And like the defensive line, I think that when fully healthy, this is one of the best secondaries in the NFL.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to go on record right now. This is going to be a top three defense in the NFL, hands down. That's not me being a biased Bills fan at all. This group right now, under McDermott's defense, which we are assuming is quite a bit more aggressive than Leslie Frazier's, this group right now is a top three defense in the NFL. I guarantee it. I mean, I hope it comes to fruition. But you never know, right? The NFL is changing every single week. There's a chance the Bills come into this year, they're an absolute mess, and they clean house, right? Because I've seen a lot of people saying it, and I might agree. If the Bills don't at least make the Super Bowl next season, changes have to be made. I mean, I'll never give the Bills a 0% chance with Josh Allen as their QB, but the window has been open for a while, and they have yet to have a lot of success.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right about that. I've seen a lot of talk saying, "Oh, Sean McDermott's on the hot seat going into the season." I don't think he is because he just signed that new long-term
Mm.
extension. I do understand where that's coming from though, because you're right. We don't want to be like the Green Bay Packers under Aaron Rodgers, where they're good every year and then get embarrassed in the divisional round or the wild card round or even sometimes the AFC Championship. That's not fun. It's not fun being terrible either. And I know the Bills have been terrible prior to McBean coming into town, but when there's a ceiling and you try to break through with your current guys and you can't, there usually is a response of change. We need to evolve. To evolve is to change. To change is to be better. And that's sometimes what organizations like the Bills or the Packers or the Saints or the Patriots with quarterbacks and wide receivers and defense and stuff like that. That's what they've had to do. I don't know. I don't think McDermott gets fired if they don't make the Super Bowl. I think it has to be the AFC Championship game at the very least. I hold the bar a little lower.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, coming in after last season, I was at a low point with the Bills. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Last season for me was not that fun to watch. Something about it just didn't feel right. After this offseason, I am fully pumped for this year. I mean, there are so many good storylines going into this year. A lot of people, from the national standpoint, are kind of counting the Bills out, right? And that's what we need, right? McDermott preaches that underdog mentality. They don't think we're going to be able to do it again. Let's go after it. Last year we were number one on like almost every list, preseason, even in the middle of the season. And I think McDermott's coaching style, it didn't really work out when he's preaching that underdog mentality and we're the best team in the league, right?
Yeah,
So this year I think it's going to work out. I'm about as pumped for a Bill season as I've been in 3-4 years, so I'm excited.
I am definitely too. This is going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see through the rest of training camp at St. John Fisher's how this defense evolves, moves into the season, how McDermott's going to call plays on this unit, excuse me. It's gonna be nice to see some changes. Maybe this is all for the best. This quick little refreshing part of the offseason where we change coaches, change a couple big players, and move in with a bunch of more underrated, low key kind of guys. We shall see. But anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. I was Don. This was Kale. This is Buffalo Sports Center. Make sure to hit that like button and to subscribe. And I hope to see all of you. Follow the Instagram, join the Discord, and of course subscribe here on the YouTube. I was Don. This is BSC. Bye bye.